What if magic isn't just psychology, symbolism, or belief shaping reality, but an actual force that operates in this world? In this episode of Discourse, Dr. Stone and myself tackle one of the oldest and most controversial questions in the occult. Is magic real? From classified U.S. research programs and modern parapsychology labs to the forgotten medieval metaphysics that once explained everything from sound and light to spiritual influences. We explore a model of reality where magic isn't just a metaphor, it's physics. Along the way, we break down historical theories of subtle forces, discuss modern research into psi phenomenon, and share personal experiences with manifestations that challenge the idea that magic is just psychology or belief. If magic were real, what would the world actually look like? And more importantly, what would that mean for you? Three, two, one. All right, welcome back to Discourse with myself, Abammon the Great, joined as always by Dr. Anna Stone.
Hello.
And this week on Discourse, we are going to be exploring quite an intense topic. Is magic real?
Is magic real?
Yeah, that's the clickbait title because that is such a ridiculous question, I think,
Well, for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a ridiculous question because, I mean, what's magic and what do we mean by real?
Yeah, what do you mean by real? I mean, I could definitely say that there are some experiences that would leave one to be completely at a loss for explanations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, real is a relative term, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's also one of those things. It's like, well, is an idea real? Is a dream real? But
Yeah.
I mean, what exactly do we mean by real?
Yeah, what quantifies real?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but we're gonna try to go a little bit into the parapsychology and people that actually try to study it from as close to a scientific lens as they can get. And then there are also, I'm going to get into my ancient philosophy kind of stuff, because there are metaphysical models that I think explain how magic works and why magic works. And if you can start from a metaphysical assumption, then philosophically magic can be coherent, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But there are a lot of people right now that are researching magic, and it feels like that it has been something that was being researched in the undercurrent of intelligence agencies, basically during the age of scientific progress, when the rest of society had decided this is ridiculous and fantasy and not a real thing, right?
When the powers that be programmed us to say that these things were ridiculous and nonsense, yet continued to heavily research them in black budget projects. 100%. I've got a list of them here.
You got a list of them.
And I firsthand knowledge of some of them because I actually work on some of those studies currently. So there's that, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. I'm really excited about that because I think it's really important. I think it's really cool that people do scientifically probe in it, even though I come from a camp where I believe that, the spiritual and the metaphysical and the occult and magic can never be proven scientifically. I think it's very important that we have people out there that are researching it from a kind of laboratory angle, parapsychological angle, and society basically says that this is all pseudoscience, and that too is a kind of a funny word because I mean there is legitimate pseudoscience. There is researching this stuff. You kind of have to fudge the scientific method a little bit in order to
I will
understand.
Very clearly explain how that is the norm in all scientific practice.
Yeah.
So what they preach about the scientific method in textbooks, never ever implemented in real life. It's not. It's just not. Now, when we go back and we go to publish papers it is at that point when the scientific community, and no one will admit this, but you all know I am not making this up. Like, I know, you'll never admit it though, but they backtrack and that's when the scientific method comes in. Never once has a person discovered something using the scientific method. Everyone that's made any kind of scientific discovery has had an idea, out of the blue idea, and then they've gone and found it and then backtracked at that point to then incorporate the scientific method. Yeah. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? So, and sometimes it doesn't hold up and sometimes it does, right? But despite the fact that something was still created, you know what I mean? And later maybe another scientist comes along and picks up one of those scrapped ideas and can put it to, the test of the scientific method. But for the most part, Tesla, Edison, Einstein, all of those great thinkers of our time or whatever, they all backtracked the scientific method. So yeah, we will not. Scientific method is designed the way it is to prevent us from discovering certain things like this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just something that if you know science, you know that, like.
Let's pull the mic in just a little bit closer. A little bit closer. Beautiful.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Go.
What?
Okay, yeah.
What part?
Wait, where are we going?
Oh, yeah. Scientific
Okay,
method?
yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, scientific method will never yield results for magic because it's designed not to.
Okay.
That's my take on it. Yeah. It's designed to thwart any real new discovery anyways. So, and that's by design, but I digress.
Yeah. So there are very few universities that have departments that do parapsychological research. Yeah. I remember the University of Pennsylvania was one of them, and I used to pull research studies when it came to the paranormal and parapsychological from them a lot. And so I think it definitely is something that there are a handful of people are trying to approach it from an academic and scientific lens, right?
There have been people researching this since the 1800s scientifically. Yeah. The issue is that there's a couple issues. The first one is that it has traditionally been a career killer for scientists. If you were trying to study some type of magic, you're out, you'd be laughed out of town. And that's the first one. So it's really scary for people to put their names on the line like that and their careers on the line. The second one is that a lot of the time the research is published under something other than magic or witchcraft. It's published under high strangeness or anomalous phenomenon or other terminology that is only known to the research communities, right? And so if you know, you know, but if you don't know, you don't know. So if you're trying to search for actual scientific evidence of magic and you go looking for like research articles on magic, does it work? You're not going to find it because that's not the terminology that's used within the academic and scholarly fields, right? So
do they do that to kind of skirt around saying I study magic?
Yes.
Yeah, just to give themselves a little more credibility.
In fact, yes, absolutely. Because, again, there's been this kind of, you get the scarlet letter on you, so to speak, if you try to look into this stuff. Despite the fact that there's so many things that, let me just say this. The amount of things in our history, in humanity's history, that have been attributed to magic initially and later were found to be just natural shit, normal stuff, that is so vast of a list, okay? So huge of a list. So it's always surprised me that science isn't more into doing this, because if we had just, scoffed at the idea of, cells or germs, right? Where would we be right now? But somebody had the, audacity to go against the popular narrative at the time and still look into it and discover that they were not magic. It wasn't supernatural. It was just stuff, right? So that's how science was supposed to work, is to be, a curious field, right? Like to kind of, solve mysteries. But at some point in time, when the church became involved, when the Catholic Church became involved with science and became the home for most scientists, that is when things started to shift, and the narrative went from, we know all there is to know about the material world, and anything outside of that is just superstition and silliness. That's not the case anymore, because now we have quantum theory, right? Quantum sciences that are explaining a lot of this stuff, or are coming close, rather, to explaining a lot of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really interesting when you're poking around alchemical literature or Kabbalah, like medieval and Renaissance Kabbalah. And then also when you're looking at Caliphate metaphysics, which is Aristotelian, they describe these concepts that are just, they're detailing physical sciences, that they're coming through purely with reason. They're assuming these concepts that aren't explained by physical science until much later, and it's really interesting to me that they're using these metaphysical processes and this metaphysical philosophy in order to approach things, and they're defining it. They're using different words, right? But they're approaching things like thermodynamics and holograms, and it's just in this medieval or Renaissance kind of language, which is what I think one of the most fascinating things about probing around that kind of stuff, that these people are able to, approach an understanding very close to what we now know as, physical scientific reality.
Right.
Right.
Well, let's start with the baseline here of what when we say magic, what are we talking about? Because we're not talking about, illusionists on the stage doing magic tricks. We're talking about occult magic, right? So there's a definition by Dr. Dean Radin, who is the chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Science up in Northern California. And he is one of the most serious researchers in this field currently. And I actually I have been, so fortunate and lucky to be able to work for some of those projects with his lab and be part of his studies too on mediumship and remote viewing, right? So that's awesome. But his definition of science is, and it's from his 2018 book called Real Magic. He defines magic as the use of intention to influence the physical world in ways that cannot be explained by conventional physical forces. And he further breaks it down into 3 different categories. The force of will, which is psychokinesis, mind over matter; divination, which is accessing information beyond the known senses; and theurgy, invoking higher intelligence or forces. And he argues that all 3 have measurable experimental analogs. So, and I think that that's a good way of putting it. It's, being able to harness the invisible force, like, Tesla had the idea of radiant energy, right? Which is the aftermath of energy. It's like this always around us is this kind of, potential of energy. And so the ability to yield or wield that energy to do your bidding, right, is kind of the way I see it. It's like being able to use the forces around us that occur naturally. So I don't feel it's supernatural personally. I don't. I feel it's very natural. It's just that science hasn't figured out how to measure it, up to the standards of the scientific method just yet.
Yeah. So I think that, we can probe into it because there are aspects of it that is causal and physical for sure. I think when we're dealing in the realm of parapsychology, when we're talking about things like psychokinesis or psychic phenomenon, and even some forms of magic like qigong, or if you're talking about energy work like from the East and that kind of stuff, that maybe there is a physical reality to it. I can definitely understand that, but there is also an immaterial dimension to it, which is what makes magic a spiritual discipline, right? So I don't think science can ever fully explain it, because then that would render the immaterial material, and that would just basically strip everything spiritual away
they
from it.
Might be able to if they changed their methodology, right? But currently I think that I don't think that they're able to, just as much as they're not able to prove the existence of God.
Yes,
right?
exactly. That's kind of what I'm getting at. It's like I think there's definitely a part of it that will never be able to be explained scientifically because it's the same problem. It's like, well, how do you figure out the material mechanics of something that is infinite and material and transcendent?
Right.
Like you can't. There's no way you can pull it.
It's just like consciousness. But see, that's the thing. And so I'm urging anyone that thinks that magic is nonsense to consider this fact. Consciousness is real. Mm-hmm. You have it. I have it. I believe that we all have it. Maybe not. But yet we cannot find it, right? We don't know where it is. We know that it is not in the brain. It perhaps is of the brain, but it is not in the brain. Just like the mind is in the brain, but it is not the brain, right? Just because we don't know how to locate it or what it looks like necessarily, does that take away from the fact that you are experiencing consciousness at this very moment? No, it doesn't. But science cannot come to an agreement at all on the definition of consciousness across all fields. Not one of them is in sync with the other. They all debate what it means, but they all have the same essence, of it. So just because they can't quantify it properly doesn't mean that we pretend it doesn't exist, right? We're very much so aware of its existence, and we very much so consider it to be like the core of being a human being, right? Like the thing that sets us apart from the other animals is, allegedly they don't have consciousness, which is ridiculous, but I don't believe that at all. But science will say that. Science will say that there's only certain animals that are conscious. How the hell do they know that? But okay, but that's what they'll say, and that's what sets us apart and makes us superior, is that we have this ability to understand that we are who we are and that we're here and we're living, right? That is what consciousness basically is our understanding of our being, right? Mm. So is that any less real to you or I just because science can't put a proper label on it or define exactly how it works or what it does? Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, so it's real easy to dismiss things that we don't understand as nonsense or superstition. It's a lot harder and a lot less, it's a lot harder and a lot more dangerous for a person to have to ponder the possibilities rather than just going with what you've been told by the powers that be.
Well, yeah, and you also have to really think about where you have to be extremely critical about how you are coming to your conclusions if you really are going to take that seriously, right?
Right.
So, I mean, if you can say that consciousness is real because I experience it, it's real, but we don't know where it comes from, right? Mm-hmm. So you are assuming that there is a cause based off of an effect that you're observing, which is basically what people who believe in magic are doing.
Right.
Is that they are assuming that, hey, there is some type of force here because when I do this, it has an effect, right? And we do this all the time in our daily lives. We observe the effect, and so we assume that there must be a cause, and we kind of take that for granted. And this gets into a realm, it's called like epistemology, which is like, where does knowledge come from? How do we know these things, right?
Yeah.
So there's that which we can like physically observe, right? So if I shoot when I hit the ball again, like in the basketball court or whatever, I can see my hand hitting the ball, so I know that the cause, like I can observe the cause and effect, right?
Yes.
However, there's a ton of stuff that we deal with where we don't observe the cause and we just assume that the cause is there because we observe the effect, right?
True.
So there are immaterial causes, there are invisible causes, and so this is actually how we got science in the first place, right? I mean, when you were talking about your microbials, the process of fermentation was described and documented for centuries before anybody figured out that it was bacteria that was doing it, right?
And that wasn't that long ago. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
I mean, in our human history, if we're to believe the history books, which I'm not so sure about anymore, but like, honestly, that was fairly recent. I mean, the microscope was invented in 1647, I think, by Robert Hooke. And this man had the ability to know exactly, he drew what a cell looked like. Mm-hmm. He had postulated that there was these little microscopic, not even that wasn't even a word yet because we didn't have a microscope, but these tiny invisible, he said, invisible little structures within a person that, and that they had like it was like a microcosm of the body, right? So mm-hmm. how we have our internal organs, like these must also have internal organs and structures that support them, like how we do. And he drew what a cell looked like before he made the microscope to find it. And then there's von Leeuwenhoek, who just a few years later, after the advent of the microscope, then he was really creepy. He went around and he would collect his neighbor's saliva. Gross. And he would say that they were animalcules, and he called them little animal men living inside of you. And that was what bacteria was. Mm. And so he had said this for years, and everyone thought he was crazy because he was going around nuts. Yeah, he was collecting people's teeth scrapings and also saliva. And then once he got a microscope, he put it under there, and guess what? Yeah. Everything he'd drawn previously was here in real life. So yeah, that does lead me to my own philosophical, like, existential crisis question, which is, okay, did these people find these things because they knew they existed, or did they exist because they were known about? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they had an idea of something and they looked for it and it was there. Just like the neutrino recently, right? In quantum science, they were like, oh, they're the God particle, we're going to find it. And then they did.
Oh, that was the Higgs boson.
Yeah, but there's the new one is, they keep calling it the Higgs boson, and then also the neutrinos, which are everywhere, constantly going in there. They're ghost particles. Sorry, that's the ghost part. My bad. It's the ghost particle and neutrinos that can go through us, through walls, etc. And they knew that they were there somehow, and then they found them. Well, how is that happening? Is it because they were already there and someone just had an inkling to look for them? And where does that inkling come from, right? Where does the idea to come from to look for those things that exist? Yeah. Or does our belief that they exist cause them to exist? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the chicken or egg scenario, and I don't know that there really is an answer. Maybe it's just a loop.
Yeah. So what has Dr. Dean Radin found?
Dr. Dean Radin, Dr. Dean Radin is fascinating because he is also maybe what some people might call former spook, because he worked for the CIA.
That's cool.
Yeah. So let me pull up on my phone paper, because my printer takes forever to print out stuff, unfortunately. So Dean Radin, first of all, he has a PhD from the University of Illinois, and he's again the chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Science. And he has worked on the double slit experiment, right? Which is the quantum observer effect, where, and then, so he has found, there's a couple of findings that he's had. So his stuff he's done studies on, if you pray over food before it is served to people, do they have better outcomes during the day? And so he did a study on this and found that regardless of whether or not the people knew that their food was being prayed over, right? Uh-huh. The people that had food that was blessed by monks, with or without their knowledge, had better outcomes over the course of the day. Nice. And it's repeated over and over again by various laboratories after his findings. Another thing that he found is that the random number generators, experiments where, he was able to show that above statistical, above the statistical threshold, like of the probability threshold, that the statistics show that it couldn't just be chance, that yes, people can affect numbers by thinking about them, right? That again would be the quantum observer effect, but just played out in a different way, There's so many different experiments right now. I don't know if this is considered magic, but it would be telepathy, right? So telepathy, I guess telepathy falls within the realm of magic, right? Because it's considered something that's supernatural. Would you say?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think within the occult and magical community, we don't spend enough time paying attention to that which would be in realm of parapsychology, but I think it's a part of it, right?
I mean, it has
because I mean, what are we doing? When me and you are in conjuration, a lot of times, that word is coming to my mind.
What, telepathy?
Yeah, telepathy. It's like, are we synced?
Yeah.
Are we communicating information unconsciously with each other, or is there, and even if you take it to the spirit, the incorporeal intelligence, right?
Yeah.
That is very similar to what's going on with telepathy. So I definitely do think stuff like psychokinesis, telepathy, I put it in the same camp, but I think that's why I like to talk about parapsychology on this podcast, because I think it's something that other occult podcasts don't really touch on. And it's, I think parapsychology as a discipline descends from the spiritualism movement, which is, a lot of our practices, our modern practices come from the spiritualism movement. But the parapsychologists kind of like ran, and they were like, we're going to look at this weird phenomenon scientifically,
because it has to do with people. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it kind of deviated into like, okay, we're ghost hunting and we have this equipment and we study psychokinesis and that kind of stuff. Well, the occultists, they're like, okay, I'm gonna, wear my robes and draw my magic circles. I'm not too interested in that, but I definitely, I hope other occultists out there are as interested in this kind of stuff, because I think the research that people that study telekinesis, telepathy is incredibly important to our discipline, and especially when we are training ourselves, paying attention to the techniques that they utilize. Stuff like the gateway tapes. The gateway tapes is one of the most, I think, groundbreaking tools that gives insight into, what's going on with astral projection, what's going on with brain waves when occultists are in liminal states or trance states, when like these processes, and so it's like having just some kind of understanding of what's being studied in that camp, I think is really important to the magician.
Right. I mean, and I'm currently, I've been part of the telepathy tapes research with Dr. Radin's lab, and that's quite fascinating. There's always going to be critics that are going to say that the studies are flawed. That's normal in science, right? But I publish research on psychic ability, right? And its ties to genetics and trauma. And mine are they're published online. That the research into psi ability, all the different clairaudience, clairvoyance, claircognizance, etc. That stuff, that has been going on forever. Like that, we've been studying that for a long time. That never kind of went out of fashion. It just has a hard time getting funding. And again, it's called other things. It's not called psychic ability. It's called anomalous phenomenon, again, high strangeness, telepathy, or, there's a whole myriad of different terminology depending on where you are in the world too, that it could be filed under. So again, it's like knowing how to search for it is important. Like looking for alternative titles. But, with regards to the government, the U.S. Stargate program was that remote viewing program, and that was funded by the CIA and the DIA, U.S. Army, and it went from 1972 to 1995, and I'm sure it's still around, because that's over 20 years, and that means there's something there, right? The estimated budget on it was over $20 million. The Stargate program was under earlier code names of Gondola, Wish, Grill, Flame, and Centerlane. And it was, obviously a classified government research initiative investigating whether or not trained subjects could obtain information about distant or hidden targets using only mental processes, or, aka remote viewing, right? So Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff were the physicists at the Stanford Research Institute, which is where Dean Radin also worked. And they published foundational results in the Journal of Nature in 1974, and the proceedings of the IEEE in 1976. Now, that famous psychic Ingo Swann was part of these studies, and Pat Price. They are two of the most studied psychics ever to exist. And Edwin May, a PhD physicist, directed the program from 85 until 1995, and he has continued publishing research post-program. So they had data that they were saving that they hadn't published, right? And they're still publishing it. And so in 1995, there was this independent evaluation done. And then that was, these other organizations were like, what are you guys spending this money on? We want all the data. So the CIA released the data, but did they really, all of it? And because there was 2 people that wanted to find out what the heck they were doing over there. And so they forced the government's hand to release the information. And then at that point, the project went belly up. But we know it didn't really go belly up, I'm sure, because there was actual yielded results from that. There were hostages that were saved in Iran by remote viewers. They had asked, I guess there was people on a Olympic team or something. Was that what it was? I'll have to look at that up in a second. There was some American hostages over in Iran, and we were trying to get them back, and we didn't know where they were. And so they put the psychics to a test. They gave them whatever information they gave them, and they were able to find those people and save them. So, that's crazy if that's true, right? That's crazy if that's true. How would they know where they were if they weren't there and the government didn't know where they were? That's nuts. So something's there. But, I think most people are thinking about magic in the sense of like, I'm going to curse you and you're going to drop dead.
Practical magic.
Yeah. So because you could talk all day about psychic stuff, and we do because we experience it. But and almost every single person I think has had some weird moment like that. So I don't think it's that crazy for people to think about someone having, precognate dreams, or like prophetic dreams, or like just knowing when something's wrong, like intuitive hits. That's what detectives are, right? That's why people go to be a cop. Like a detective is they have that gut feeling. That's more normalized. But what we're talking about with magic, I think for this episode, is more like, freaking wave my magic wand and make things happen.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So with that being said, like we covered out the psychic stuff a little bit, but let's get into like actual magic, where you want something and you do a spell for it, and then it either happens or doesn't, I guess.
So I think one of the most popular theories for working magic amongst occultists, right, is that it's kind of mostly all psychological and has to do with perception, and that spirits are partitions of psyche.
Mm-hmm.
Has to do with the power of belief, in that if you order your belief in your worldview enough, that as long as you perceive something happen, then that means it happened. But you've actually experienced yourself something like you experienced like in your face crazy physical magic. You have a crazy story about that we'll get into a little bit later. But
I did, unfortunately, yes.
Yes.
And this is the problem. Like, so people say you need to believe in it, right?
Yeah.
And I believe that, right? I do. I'm delusional about my own belief in myself, about my outcomes for magic. And then, but people say people say you have to believe in it, and then other people say that it has to do with psychology, right? And that I believe both of those things, or up until very recently, I believed both of those things, right? And I still have the idea about the belief. I think you do need to believe it. That being said, like there's an issue, because what we'll talk about later, I don't believe in it.
Yeah.
So I don't know that that's true.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But moving into, so I mean, that is one of the most popular theories, especially amongst, the beginning stages of magic. But
yeah,
you have that experience, and there are certain things that people witness. There are physical manifestations of it. You can see it.
Right. It's
rare.
So
how do we explain it? What is the working model? What is the working theory on it? Right.
Okay. So let's also let's define when we say physical manifestation.
Yes.
So, like in the movies, they show, like, I don't know, let's go to that movie, The Craft, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's girls in the forest, of course, doing circle stuff. And the winds pick up and everything goes crazy. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. I mean, sure, that could happen. It could also be explained by natural phenomenon, right?
Yes, yes.
So that's not a good one to use. So are we talking about like you summon a spirit and the spirit is right there in front of you and everyone in the room could see it?
Yes, I think what we're talking about is sensibly apprehending a manifestation of magic, as in you perceive it with one of your 5 senses, right?
Okay.
Not your imaginative faculty, not your third eye, not a bunch of circumstances that really, really weird coincidences that we call synchronicities that kind of ring with us and trigger something in us. I'm talking about, the demon steps into the room. Right. You can see it.
Like something that anyone with eyes or ears or the sense of smell, touch, whatever could also agree with you on.
Yes.
If they were in the room.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So that's not common.
It's very uncommon.
We'll be very real here. Yeah. In fact, when I was trying to figure out what happened in my situation, I was reaching out to everybody, researchers, whatever, being like, what is this? What happened? And every one of them said the same thing to me is, oh my gosh, you witnessed something that a very few people on this planet have ever seen. Because it's not common. And it takes some really strong magic to get that stuff.
Yes.
Like really scary, strong magic. I will say scary because I feel like regardless of what you're asking for, if you ask for like, maybe money, maybe if you said, I want $1 million and all of a sudden, boom, poof, $1 million appeared in your house, I think you'd be like, holy shit, but you wouldn't be like terrified. You know what I mean? You'd be like stoked, but you wouldn't be terrified.
Out, yeah.
I mean, it would be freaky, but it wouldn't be like you were terrified for your, safety or whatever. Safety. And I think that unfortunately, the majority of people that do have manifestations of magic have scarier ones.
Yes.
Would you say that that's accurate?
Yeah, I definitely do think it's accurate. I think there's every once in a while you get a physical manifestation that I think, is placed there to just kind of rope you back in, just to be like, just to remind you that like, hey, you're doing something real here, because it's very easy to fall into that kind of mindset of just like, maybe this is all just imagination and a LARP, like I
mean, I still feel that way half the time, and then I have something happen that reminds me, nope.
Yeah, and that's usually once you start slipping into that mindset, that's when something happens where it's like, and for me, every time I've witnessed a physical manifestation of magic, it's never been the times where I'm, doing daily ritual practice and working on some big crazy ritual. It's always been the times where it's like, I'm in the in-between cool down periods that something, weird happens to kind of just like wake me back up.
Yeah.
Right?
So then, so that's the other issue about magic is that the magic persists even after the ritual is over. Mm-hmm. It can, right? So things can, I don't know, maybe come like be walk through the door, so to speak, and like stick around, and then show you stuff after the fact. And so at that point, then how do we even know that it's related to that?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's where you can start to like lose it a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. 100%.
I think. But well, let's just say, so again, I know that there's so many people out there, and I want to say this in the kindest of ways, but you know me. There's so many people out there that will laugh at us and say we're insane or stupid or whatever because we believe in magic. And yet those very same people will go to church every Sunday and worship a man in the sky that judges them for their sins and the Holy Spirit, and talk about welcoming the Holy Spirit into them, right? And they can do that and yet think that magic isn't real.
Well, I mean, one of the simplest things, it doesn't even have to be that, somebody could tell you that it's 12 p.m. and believe that it's 12 p.m. It's like, what are you talking about, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but how is the majority of the people that will hate on us for our beliefs the ones that also believe in magic? like religion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it doesn't make sense to me. How is that one thing? That's the only thing like that, and nothing else can exist? It sounds like science.
Mm-hmm.
How science does the same shit. You know what I mean? No, this is everything that's here. Nothing else is worthy of study. Like, what? I don't get it. It's really strange to me. But because spells are what? What are spells? Spells are focused energy and words, typically speaking, to create an outcome, right? To make a goal, you know, realize. Prayer is the same thing.
Yeah, perhaps.
Perhaps. What do people do when they pray?
Usually when I'm praying, you know, it has to do with like gratitude. I'm not really like asking.
That's not normal. Normal people are praying for stuff like, please God, take this pain away. Please God, don't let my husband die of cancer. Please God, you know, whatever it is.
I don't think if you're religious, that's not how you pray. I think if...
What are you talking about? That's what all... Have you been to church, like a regular church? Because that's
a regular
literally
church?
Every week. My entire childhood growing up, every week was the pastor praying for people that had sent requests to him, however they did it, I guess maybe in the donation pan or whatever. But everyone would get together everyone would stand up and they'd say, okay, now we're going to do our prayers. And he would list off, and this is not just my church, this is like every church I've ever been to, list off the name of parishioners and their troubles, and we would all pray for them to go away.
At the very end of a mass, they do that, right? But usually when you're praying, like religious people are taught when you pray, you know, if you're gonna ask for something, it's supposed to be not asking for like a thing. You're supposed to be like, please God, grant me humility, or please God,
I've never heard that ever.
Let me, please God, help me be merciful as you are merciful to me. Right?
I think you're unique because every person I've ever met and every church I've been to has been about praying for, you know, forgive my sins. That's the number one prayer everyone does, is forgiving sins. Like, oh, I sinned. I shouldn't have done that. Please don't send me to hell. Like literally. So that's focused energy to create an outcome, right? It's the same thing as spells. It's just done in a different way and called something different is my point. And it is. I mean, but here's the thing. Every major culture throughout all history, recorded history, has had magical beliefs of some sort, right? Starting with, I mean, not even starting with, but like if you go back in time and you go back to, you know, ancient Egypt, right? We have the Egyptian magical texts, right? These are the oldest known magical religious scripts that were from 2400 BCE, right? And then that's the pyramid text, the coffin text. Then we have the Greek magical papyri. We have the Mesopotamian magic, the Babylonian exorcists. Like, you know, they had, I mean, exorcisms is magic, right? You're doing spells to alleviate someone of a demon. Then we have, you know, the Greco-Roman magical theory, Renaissance and early modern magical theory, modern scientific experiments, and psi phenomenon. Like throughout time, there's been some aspect of magic that has been pervasive through all of those cultures and still standing despite the narrative that it's nonsense. Mm-hmm. So how's that possible if it's not real?
How does you're just talking about why so many different cultures believe in it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, why is that?
I'm not sure.
No, I mean, there has to be something to it. Like, this is just like with the idea of God. Every culture, despite not having contact with each other, allegedly, came up with the same basic idea. Mm-hmm. Right? So doesn't that point to the notion that there's something real there?
Yeah.
Or is everyone just delusional? You know?
Yeah.
So what do you think? What is the psychology, though, behind it? Like, you were just recently reading a book where you had a moment the other day, right? Why don't you tell us about that?
What do you mean?
The book that you're reading.
What? I don't know.
About magic, how it goes, how it works.
Oh, if you're talking about, okay. So there is a working theory from the Middle Ages that made it into the Renaissance and was probably the most popular operative theory for magic for a while. I think in modernity, we're looking at theories of magic. The most popular one is mentalism, right? Basically, that psychological.
Mind over matter.
I'm sorry?
Mind over matter?
Yes, mind over matter, basically. And this is kind of ties into the Kabbalion a little bit, like mind's all's mind, that kind of stuff. So that is the most popular working theory right now, that it's all psychological. However, this strips the magic from magic, in my opinion. So this is why astrology is, basically personality tests now. It's like an MBTI for crystal people. This is what happens, and this is where chaos magic is important, because it's like with chaos magic, all you really need is the power of delusional belief that it's operative on the subconscious mind, and that the subconscious is such a crazy machine that it will just make your behaviors and actions and make things manifest, as long as you can plant it deep enough within your subconscious mind. Now, this is a huge part of magic, right? I think that the subconscious theory and basically like the behaviors that happen in your mind, this is a huge part of what makes operative magic work.
Yes.
However, there's the extra part of it, and that is when we're talking about the physical manifestations, and it does not explain the physical manifestations. Something catches on fire that shouldn't catch on fire, right? Entity walks in the room, you can visibly see it, right?
Yeah.
That you can't explain that with that model. And sometimes you'll see, and it happens a lot in the more kind of like modern magic, Golden Dawn, OTO adjacent stuff, where you'll see people that get into like deep into initiation, 9th, 10th degree OTO, and they will think that this is the working model because they wouldn't have had an experience where there was a physical manifestation. And the reason I am saying they haven't had a physical manifestation, even though they've been practicing magic for decades, is because they believe magic to work this way, right? Because what we do know about magic is that magic does require a certain amount of belief in order to operate.
Right. Yes.
So this working theory that was popular in the Middle Ages, it's by Al-Kindi, but that is a debate. Up for debate. Some people say it's not Al-Kindi, it's pseudo-Al-Kindi, that it was just written and attributed to him. But it ended up becoming the popular theory within the Renaissance, and basically during the Renaissance Europe, they would call it radiation. And it's called the stellar rays. And that Al-Kindi, if we're going to break it down to its most basic form, Al-Kindi believes that there are rays that are emanating from everything, including the stars, which is why it's called on the stellar rays, but it emanating from the elements, the materials, basically anything that you would use in magic is emanating these kind of rays. Well, in the Renaissance, they started calling it, Agrippa was calling it radiation. But that it's really interesting when you go into it, because this text, Al-Kindi's on the stellar rays, when you're reading it and you're looking at it, there's this amazing blend of Aristotelian metaphysics with Platonic metaphysics, right? So the Aristotelian metaphysics that you're going to see is Al-Kindi's rays lean into this kind of idea called optics, which is basically Aristotle believed that in order for you to see something, there had to be a substance that you were seeing through. That
substrate?
So you're like a substrate, basically, that you were seeing through. So in order for the light from my stage light to contact my eyes, that there had to be a medium that it traveled through.
Right.
And so this is the theory of optics. Now, Aristotle's optics were kind of flawed and couldn't account for basic things like why a circle turns into a line. His substance theory wouldn't work there, but there were other philosophers that kind of like fixed it up and made it so it worked. So Al-Kindi's rays are kind of extension on this optics theory, and where everything is emanating. But you'll also see Al-Kindi in this, he's talking a lot about forms. It's talking about form and matter, right?
Okay.
And so I'm going to give you form and matter. And he's talking about the problem of universals. And so we first need to understand what a universal is, right?
Okay.
So universal is redness, okay? When I say redness, okay, like this couch you're sitting on participates in redness, right?
Okay.
The fire behind us, it participates in redness.
Yeah.
Now, redness is not a thing. It's not like the fire itself or the couch itself, right? But the unifying thing between them is redness. And if the planet exploded tomorrow, right, and everything we knew ceased to exist, and the universe was a black void, right? Redness would still exist because if something came into being and participated in redness, it would have the quality of redness, right?
Okay.
So this would make redness a universal. This would make it something that was eternal, universal, always existent, and that kind of thing, right? So with universals, we understand that there is something that is immaterial, eternal, and we can apprehend with our intellect, right? Just by observing stuff with our senses. So by observing stuff with our senses, we can make an assumption that there is this thing that is eternal, exists somewhere out there, that will always exist, even though we have never come into sensible contact with it. We can apprehend it with our intellect.
Okay.
So I'm going to read a little bit from, I want to read a few things because I think this is really, really fascinating if you understand what he's talking about here, because he's pointing towards physical sciences. So Al-Kindi, he says, for the power of heating and fire is grasped by reason, yet nothing like it is perceived by sense. Therefore, that power is not known in itself even by reason, but is only imagined according to its effect, which has been perceived by sense. And in this way, that power is said to be comprehended by reason, and the same must be understood of singular things. So, this is the Middle Ages. Thermodynamics is not a thing. We do not understand how heat works. We just know that when you put something into the fire, it gets hotter, right?
Okay.
And so what he's basically saying is that heating itself, like he's talking about thermodynamics, and he's saying like you can reason that there is some process, some power in that fire that makes things hot, right? You can reason that. So you can come to that conclusion that there's something in there, right? You don't need to know thermodynamics. You can be like a guy in the Middle Ages that knows nothing of molecular science and how energy transforms, but you can assume that there is a power there that transfers heat and energy.
Sure.
Right?
Chemical reaction. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So he's talking about how one can assume some power because you can witness the effect. You do not need to know what the cause is because you can assume that there is a universal heat that is attached to the fire, the heating the thermodynamics.
Because every fire is hot.
Yeah. So the power there is going to be universal, right? And so I'm going to read another excerpt. Endowed with this desire, the ancient fathers, seeing with bodily eyes the manifold diversity of worldly things, searched out their origins and other conditions with anxious and keen inquiry. And in these matters they perceived many things by sense, and they found still more by the guidance of reason, things which are held to be beyond human comprehension even by the wise men of our time. So he's talking about, in this, the ancient fathers, the ancients, the sages, them looking at the stars. And they're noticing something that's happening. They're noticing that when stars are moving across the sky, that the world around them changes. Depending on the position of the stars, that, it would be fall. Depending on the position of the stars, we should harvest now. We should plant seeds now. That kind of stuff. They can assume certain animals are going to show up dependent on where stars are. So if you're going to operate by the same idea of universals, you can understand that there is something that is linking the position of the stars. There is some kind of universal to the position of the stars and the changes in nature. There's something they're both participating in that is immaterial. And these are called occult virtues, right? So when we talk about occult virtues, this is what's used in witchcraft. It's what's used in Hermeticism. This is why bay leaf gets you money and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is the assumption that you're making because you are assuming that there is a cause because you notice an effect. In the bay leaf, it participates in something immaterial that is causing this kind of change, right? So we know as modern people that, the reason that the seasons change is because of the position of the planet as it's spinning around in the solar system and that kind of stuff. So there's not a direct actual cause that is coming from the stars that is causing the seasons to change, but there is some type of force at play that is immaterial, and it is a universal that these two things are linked to. And so for the ray which descends from the center of the star to the center of the earth is proved to be strongest in the kind of its operation, but those rays which are made oblique from the center of the earth are weakened in their effect in proportion to the obliquity, unless insofar as they are strengthened by the rays of other stars concurring in the same places. So right here, he is now talking about his ray theory. He's saying that the center of the star, there are rays that descend from the center of the star. They're strongest going from the center of the star to the center of the earth. I think that's really, really interesting because what is the center of the star? What is the center of the earth? That is the highest, it's going to be the most gravity and the most density right there, right? And he's using this assumptions of universals in order to come to this conclusion of density within planets and stars, right?
Okay.
But it is also carefully noted, since everything in this world is continually moved by some kind of motion, the form which it receives through motion has as its underlying matter the form of which that same thing is deprived. For every form now existing is the matter of the immediately following one, which passes into it through the motion of stellar rays ruling in the thing with its whole condition. Hence, it comes about that a diverse underlying matter receives through motion a diverse new form, namely according as it is more fitted by its own nature to receive that form. And from this, it comes about that from wheat seed, a wheat harvest is produced more readily than a barley harvest in this place. Whereas if barley seed had been cast there, a barley harvest would have been generated by that same power of the rays concurring in that place, which, being the same in whatever place it exists, works differently according to the diversity of the matter found. Now that's a lot. I know it's really confusing, but I'm going to explain what's happening here. He's basically saying that the wheat seed, it receives the form, the immaterial. We're talking about the universal. The form is the universal, right? So wheat at every stage, wheat as a perfect universal, right? The idea that is apprehended when the wheat seed is physically there, we have an idea of it becoming a wheat harvest,
right? The DNA in it creates the blueprint for it, yes.
Yes. So the wheat has received the universal of every stage of the wheat.
Right. The blueprint,
imprinted on it, basically.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And so basically what he's saying is that the entire timeline of the wheat is impressed in the wheat in the moment. Every single stage. We're talking about some Donnie Darko
but it's us too. That's what DNA is. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It
gives us a blueprint for a toddler, child, adult, elderly, death, like everything, right? So
yes, okay.
Is that magic? It might be.
So let's change this to something that doesn't have DNA. Let's say that it's let's say it's a planet, right?
Okay.
So let's say it starts off as an asteroid, and then at some point, at some point, the lifespan of this rock turning into a planet, it is apprehending the universal of what is a planet, right? Mm-hmm. So at every stage, the planet in its universal form, it is a form that is being received into the matter. So the entire concept of a planet is packed into this.
The schema of the planet,
So that means that every slice of time is packed into the planet at any moment.
Okay.
Right? So you're getting a lot of different variations, a lot of different motions, and these are the changes that are occurring, that are happening around the universal, but the universal is an immaterial thing, and it is impressed upon the planet right there.
Okay.
So I'm going to read this last part, and this is made manifest to sense in certain cases. For fire transmits rays of heat to nearby places, thermodynamics, and earth rays of cold. Healing medicines as well, taken inwardly or applied outwardly, seem to diffuse through the body of the recipient rays of their virtue. The collision of bodies also produces sound, right? So we're talking about sound waves moving through the air, the particles in the air that cause the vibrations,
right?
Which spreads everywhere by rays of its own kind. And every colored thing emits its rays by which it is seen. So we're talking about photons right there. So in this, he's describing a lot of physical sciences, right?
Yeah.
But I think what is most what we know.
We know.
So we've been able to see thermodynamics. We've been able to see sound waves. We've been able to see light waves. He's described this, and he's used Aristotelian metaphysics approaches. The only thing that doesn't get explained by physical science is the slices of time impressed in the matter.
Time.
And so I think this is one of the most fascinating things, because Al-Kindi's theory of the rays, it goes in and out of vogue throughout history all the time. It's cutting edge, and then it's ridiculous. And then it's cutting edge, and then it's ridiculous. And this keeps happening to it. But I think it's very, very cool to be looking at that and to see him describing all these different physics processes. And he's able to come to those assumptions by measuring the effect and understanding that there is an occult force, a hidden force behind it. And he's saying the same thing about the timepieces that are the stars that are emitting the rays. And so this is, he goes on the rays to take this into why the elements work and why talismans work and that kind of stuff. He expands on it, but I'm going to keep it there short just to kind of look at, what exactly is this time layer that is impressing these occult virtues and that is binding the occult virtues of these materials together, binding the occult virtues of the planets to the things on the earth. Because if we can accept that, these universals exist, right? The redness, okay, and that as that couch deteriorates into, maybe it starts getting grungier, it starts turning brown, right?
Yeah.
So that redness is participating in different slices of time.
Okay.
So basically, one of the most recent theories on what time is time as a field. And I think if time as a field, as a scalar field that we're operating in, then Al-Kindi's ray theory isn't that crazy on why the occult virtues of the stars work and why they are embedded in material things, and why everything is tied together. And so what we're seeing here is an expression of ontology, which is the nature of being, how things can metaphysically approach this world of forms or the universals.
Right.
And the thing is about the universals is a philosophical problem in metaphysics that has never been solved. Right. So it is one of the, if you're going to be a philosopher, this is going to be one of the things that you pick up and try to
solve it,
explain, because nobody's ever been able to nail it down perfectly.
Yeah.
So I think using Al-Kindi's logic, that if we can measure the force by the effect, then that kind of leaves some room for magic existing. And being a reality, metaphysical reality, it explains how the occult virtues work, why the occult virtues work, and it does lend into why there are certain symbols, like when we're using stars, elements, that kind of stuff becomes a little bit cross-cultural. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, I was thinking about this as you're saying that, and I'm like, okay, what if it's that, how they say that there's that divine spark of God in all of us, right? What if that people that are practicing magic, the ones that are really doing it, the ones that are really believing, I think maybe the belief part comes in play here most importantly, but like the ones that are knowing, rather, instead of believing, but knowing that their magic is going to work. What if that somehow lets the practitioner access that divine spark and thus the result emerges? Because if there really is a divine spark in each one of us, the divine spark of the creator, the God, whatever you want to call it, then I think everybody agrees, that everybody that believes in a God anyways agrees that it's a universal, right? That God is the creator, right? And has the ability to create or destroy. So what if the practitioner, in their mindset of commanding and knowing that it will work, then is able to access that capability of creating or destroying.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
What if it's that simple? Yeah, it's making, so if we could recognize the universal as real, then that is 100% what we are accessing, right? And so this is like proto-Jungian archetype.
Right.
And so people have completely misunderstood what Jung considered archetypes, because Jung's archetypes were Plato's forms, which are universals, right? But everybody's kind of misinterpreted it into archetypes are like these characters that we kind of identify with.
They're templates of things.
Yeah. And the forms can be templates of things, but they're real, right? Universals are form,
so are archetypes,
but they're real. Yeah. So when we're operating with magic, we are kind of receiving the universal that exists, and it exists because we can intelligibly,
we know it,
we know it, and now we're making it sensibly manifest. And the medium here, the substance that this is traveling through, if we're going by Aristotle's optics, is going to be a field of time,
right? I mean, time is a problem, right?
Yeah.
But I was just thinking about, and now and knowing is half the battle. Like, maybe it's that. It's just knowing that you're capable of doing it. Time is a problem, though, because time is, again, we made this up. This concept of time has been created so that we could label things and stick to schedules or whatever. But what is it really, Because I know that it isn't what we're experiencing, like in reality, but it's almost something you can't quantify it properly. It's not, we're seeing it in a linear fashion because that's how we can perceive it. But I do believe, and I was able to see when I died, that it's all happening all at once. It's just like our little version of it's happening to us right now. But like there's an infinite amount of other things happening at the same time with us in it. You know what I mean? So maybe it's just like you're able to access that outcome over there, So because the quantum sciences says that decisions, like there's infinite possibility of a thing until a decision is made, right? So if that's true, and if I'm pondering something, okay, like should I go left or right, okay, or straight forward or whatever, then as I'm thinking about what I should be doing, all possibilities exist. Right? Until I make a decision. And now there's only that decision that exists. So maybe it's kind of like that in between the actual execution of a decision and the pondering of one, that we're able to access the potentials that we normally wouldn't be able to. You know what I mean? Like perhaps it's something like that. But I don't know. But I do know that this would, the idea that we could access the God part of us and create or destroy things would account for all of the things in magic, because it would account for people who don't believe it and yet experience it, right? Because it doesn't require belief on their part for it to be true. You know what I mean? Like if we're actually able to create something, an outcome that other people can witness despite their disbelief in it, then the idea that you're accessing the God part of yourself would be sufficient.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the other people wouldn't have to believe it because you're just making things happen, and it doesn't matter. Their belief is beside the point. It's the practitioner's belief, right? And I would think that would have to be, it would have to be something like that, because again, there's a lot of things people can say about what they don't believe, but then they experience it, right? And then what do you do when you don't believe in something and you experience it? What happens, that can mess people up, right? Can screw up.
Yeah.
That can really mess with people's minds. We see it all the time, on social media, AI coming in and changing things in videos, and people right away believing it or not, or the opposite, right? Or never believing anything. So I think that's why I don't think there's a lot of people that can actually do it, to get the results that are wanted or what they're shown in movies. because it would be I don't think the average person could handle it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think that's why it's been occulted this whole time, by the way. It's because it would probably make a lot of people go crazy.
I think that it's occulted. What we're really talking about is these hidden virtues, and you really need to be able to apprehend something immaterial and that is hidden within stuff in order to experience it. And certain people are not built for that.
That's right. Yeah. No, I think I seriously believe that. Because, but our perception is our reality. So there is some merit to the idea that it's simply a psychological process, because there is some merit. Okay. But again, it doesn't account for everything. But the idea that you can change outcomes based on your mindset or your ideas about things is definitely a proven thing. I mean, that's very well known and documented that people's mindset matters. There's studies upon studies that are done on critically ill patients that, when they have a bad attitude or they're at a defeatist mindset, that they have worse outcomes than people that are positive and have positive thinking and kind of will themselves to live, right? That's a known scientific quantifiable data set, okay? But what's not quantifiable data set is some of the other things that happen so quickly that nobody could possibly, or it happens within the privacy of your own home, and you go to tell somebody and they will never believe you, right? Because it's something that sounds like it's out of a movie, and that sucks. I think for the people that experience it, it's really, that's probably the worst part, is that you don't really have anyone to talk to about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think magic can be dangerous for people. But I also don't think that a lot of people would ever encounter that stuff.
Yeah.
Even if they practice magic every day. Personally. I don't know why, but I just don't think that a lot of people, I think it's like there's a safety net built in. Like if the person can't handle it, they're not going to be able to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Maybe? I'm not sure.
Yeah. So I think we're going to take a break really quick.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do an ad read.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't want to show mid-roll ads on these episodes anymore. So we're going to start doing ad reads. And right now we're ad reading for ourselves, right?
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. Halfway through. So,
shameless plug.
I'm sorry?
Shameless plug.
Yeah, shameless plug for livegrimoire.com.
Yeah. Are you tired of losing all of your spells, to the gnomes in your house? As I look through my papers like a frantic person,
do you keep missing important appointments with demon kings? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, livegrimoire.com, your ultimate solution. Yeah.
Can help you organize and keep track of all of your ritual, invocations and such. No, seriously, it's a great app.
It's cool. It's become, I'm always on it. It's always on my phone. I'm always pulling it up. There's a bunch of features on it right now. We got a little bit of users, but there's everything an occultist is going to need is on there. Like we have tarot section, electional astrology. I just added a natal chart feature, and then it got built because I needed a citation manager, an occult citation manager.
An occult one, yeah.
So because I'm always reading tomes and grimoires, and I'm losing track.
Before you read it.
Yeah, I'm losing track of stuff. I'm losing track of spells. I'm losing track of quotes from philosophers, and I'm losing track of research papers that, some guy, he's studying something, and I'm really interested in what he's studying in. And so I needed an occult citation manager, and that's how Live Grimoire got started. But then I started putting in all the things that I needed into an occult app, and it's kind of evolved. It's amazing. So the electional astrology, it's a premium feature. The premium is $4.99 a month, and I think it's totally worth it. The electional astrology feature I have not seen on any other astrology website. You can literally go in, you could put in, I need the moon in Libra on a Friday night, and Jupiter needs to be in trine, and it will find a date for you. And to do your election, your spell, your talisman. Cool. It's really cool. It's been really helpful, because usually I have to usually that's a pretty messy process. I have to cast a few charts in order to get there. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. You see, he has a wall that is one of those conspiracy theorists that take the string and, you know, connect the points
that
of
I
the
chart
he
the
has that
aspects
for planets.
with. Yeah,
swear,
for the planets.
promise.
Yeah.
It's right
And I
behind
use a red thread to do it too.
You do.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, that's cool. I just added a natal chart feature with transit charts just because, you know, obviously you're going to need it. But it's cool because it's like in my pocket. I always know the planetary hours now. You can set your location. You can set if you use, you know, tropical astrology, sidereal astrology for it. And then one of the really cool things is the journal entry feature. So when you write a journal entry, you have the option to add an astrological chart to it. So like when you get out of a ritual and you're writing up like, okay, this happened, that kind of stuff, you can sync an astrological chart to it, and then you can also add tarot cards to it.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite features of it, though, is that you can publish your rituals or spells or prayers or meditations or whatever to the community. So you can follow people on there, other practitioners, and then you can learn from each other that way too. So it's a great space for getting other insights on different magical rituals, you know, invocations, stuff like that, you know, from actual real today people, and have some kind of, I don't know, community too at the same time. So I publish a lot of my stuff on there, not everything, but some of it, you know. So my spells, most of the spells that I do or talk about on these podcasts are on there. And they are, you know, if you're on the app, then you have access to them as well. And you can share yours with us.
Yeah, no, it's great. There's a ton of features on it. The ritual builder you were talking about, it helps you keep track of your prayers, like basically all your rituals. And then you can, there's a thing where you can stick them all together and print it out. So it's like, oh, I'm going to take this prayer that I have saved and do it with this invocation that I have saved and that kind of thing. You can print it all out. Manage your quotes, citations. There is a recipe builder for if you're a magical crafter. I put in food cost analysis into the recipe builder. So now you can figure out how much it's going to cost you to make those candles.
That's really cool. I didn't know that.
It's very important if you're planning on selling your magical materials.
Right, and it's free for the, you know, there's a free version, and then there's also a paid version. So highly suggest you check it out. Yeah,
I think the paid version, so the free version, you get everything except for the electional astrology and the tarot features. And then there's also like an OCR reader. So one of the cool things that I do is like when I'm reading on my couch, I can take my phone and I can take a picture of what I'm reading.
What?
And then livegrimoire.com will transcribe it and save it in my citation manager.
Are you
for
serious?
me. Yes,
I did not know
it's pretty
that.
powerful,
but
that's a premium feature. But it's pretty
hella dope. That's amazing.
It's really helpful because that way, like when I'm sitting in the living room on the couch, I don't have to get up and go find my grimoire, write it down, or go up to my computer and type it in. I just take a little picture, and Live Grimoire just saves the citation for me.
Right, you don't even have to write.
Yeah,
or type. It just does it for you. I mean, come on.
Very useful.
It's like a no-brainer.
Yeah, so you guys can
if
see
you're
why
serious
I love
magical practitioner.
If you're serious.
If you're a real one, and you're not LARPing,
you're
gonna be on this app.
You're gonna download our app.
Yeah, man. Otherwise, you're a poser.
Okay, yeah, but you can see why I love this. So, anyways,
no, I do. You're such a geek about it. Yeah,
yeah.
But no, seriously, it's great.
I'm not just trying to sell subscriptions. I was like,
You're
literally use this all the time.
No, he's very proud of it. You guys don't. You got to help him out. So
yeah, you do help him out. I know. I had somebody go in and pen test it the other day. I didn't do it myself. This is like some vigilante went and pen tested it for me, and thank God it was a white hat hacker, dude. And he gave me like all the bugs and stuff. But
yeah, man, that's crazy. I remember that happening.
Yes,
we were like, who's doing this to us?
Yeah, what a nice person. I really appreciate the man who did that.
But so be there or be square, man.
Yeah. So anyways, we've shilled our stuff. No more mid-roll ads. So we're just gonna shill our stuff for a little bit in the middle, and then we'll get back into the conversation. Is magic real, Dr. Stone? So
unfortunately, it's yes, it is.
We gotta do.
Okay, so
3, 2. All right, Dr. Stone. So now we are back. All right, so we're going to talk about, is magic real? So you have a pretty crazy experience of with a physical manifestation of magic. It's one of the wildest magic stories I've ever heard.
It is.
And so why don't you go a little bit into it?
All right. Okay, so I've mentioned this before briefly, but it is such a traumatic experience of my life that like I really struggle with it. So I have to give some backstory, unfortunately, but here's the scenario: is I was in a very toxic relationship with a person, and we were living in this duplex in Van Nuys, and we had the back house, like, so there was like 3 houses, like a front house and then a duplex in the back, and like they were all behind each other, right? Like, so our house was the farthest one back, and so that meant the people in the front part of the duplex could like block our cars in and stuff with their cars if they were being dicks, and they were dicks. Okay. They moved in, and they were a young couple from Guatemala. They didn't like my partner at all, for very obvious reasons and very valid reasons. He was not normal and not well mentally. And he got into an argument with the wife. Well, there was an ongoing feud between him and the neighbors. And I tried to stay out of it and try to mitigate it, but it got pretty bad. And it was completely his fault, like completely his fault. And one day he went outside, and the wife had asked him to clean up some of this mess he had made out there, and he called her a bad name. He said some horrible things to her, and I was like, oh my gosh. Well, the husband gets off work, and he comes over and he beats him up. It was drama. But the next day or 2 days later, I had been out in the garden, and I had been gardening by our steps to the front door. And I had just been in there, because the reason I'm saying this is because I was just there in the garden. And he comes in the house, and he's like, I found this under the doorstep. And he shows me this little plastic jar. And I had never seen one before in my life, but I had some knowledge of a curse jar, right? Like, I don't even know where I had known about that from. Like, I honestly, I don't remember where I would have read it, but I'm sure I had. Okay. So like, this is not something that I'd never heard of, or, but I'd never seen one in real life. And I immediately knew exactly what I cannot tell you how I knew, because this was a point in my life when I was hands off of magic. I had had some scary stuff happen previously. I had ditched my altar. I put it in storage. I wasn't touching tarot cards. I was not practicing at all because I'd had a scary, like, kind of ghost situation earlier. But I knew, like, the feeling that came over me when he walked into, I was doing laundry, and he walked back in by the washing machine, and he was like, look what I found by the steps. And I saw it, and it was filled with like black dirt, it looked like, but it looked like there was cobwebs in there too, and like other stuff. And I knew that, I was like, where did you find that? And he told me, and I was like, and I immediately knew that it had not been there previously. This has been put there, right? And I knew exactly what it was. And I said, oh my God, that's a curse jar. And he was like, what? This is just a plastic, like, toothpick jar that's been filled with dirt. And he starts to open it. And I was like, don't open it. And he's like, what? And he kept opening it, and he opened it. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, shut that back up and close it. And so he did. He's like, you're being ridiculous, whatever. Tells me I'm crazy. And then he hands it to me, and he leaves. And I'm just like, the feeling of dread that came over me when I saw this thing, and when he opened it, I cannot stress how bad it was. I immediately went to the kitchen, and I grabbed my phone, and I called this Botanica down the street that I, knew was there, but I'd never been into it before. But I knew it was there, and I called them, and I told the guy on the phone what had happened. And he's like, wrap it in foil. He tells me, follow my instructions exactly. Wrap it in foil. Get a bottle of water and bring a container of salt with you, and come right now. It's going to be $200. Okay. And I was like, okay. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go get ripped off right now at a Botanica, but whatever, it'll make me feel better. So I go to the Botanica, I walk in there, and it's this, Hispanic man. And he's like, okay, come back. And he takes me into this back room. And, oh my God. And he tells me, tell him what happened. And I told him, he's like, is there anybody that has it out for you or, you know, your partner? And I was like, well, yeah, the neighbors, dude, like they're super mad at, you know, at him. You know, I didn't think they were mad at me. I thought they were mad at him, you know? And he says, okay, he never touched this thing, by the way. Okay. He never touched it. So he tells me to hold it in my hands, and it's a small little jar, right? Like, so he tells me to hold it like this in my hands, and it's in the foil, right? And he puts his hands on top of my hands, right? Like, so I'm like this, and he cups my hands in his, and he starts praying in Spanish really loudly. Like, he is screaming, like yelling, right? And I started to laugh because it was so absurd and ridiculous. And I started to be like, Anna, you're an idiot. What are you doing? And right as I was thinking that, my hand started getting hot. And I was like, and then I realized that it was on fire. Like it accelerated from nothing to on fire so fast that like, I like, you know, like, oh my God. And it dropped onto the table in front of me, like, because we were standing next to a table, and it dropped onto the table, standing upright. And the foil just melted to ash, like ash. Just, this is a plastic jar. The plastic jar is unscathed, 100% unscathed, not melted, not burnt, anything, but the foil is gone. It's ash. Like, I've never seen foil turn to ash before like that. And I was freaking out, right? Like, I was like, what the fuck just happened? Like, and I just look at him and I'm like, oh my, and he goes, I'll be right back. And he leaves and goes out to the other room, and he's talking to somebody else. And I lived in Los Angeles long enough to know a little bit of Spanish, right? You know, I don't speak it by any means at all, but like, I was hearing him he was freaking out, right? Like, he was freaking out and saying that he didn't know what to do. And something about fire and, you know, whatever. And then something about like demons or some shit. Like, I can't remember. He said something scary. And then he came back in, and he's like, did you bring the water and the salt? And I was like, yeah, I did. And I had a bottle of water, closed, sealed bottle of water. And all of this was in my purse. Okay. Like, so he didn't have access. No one touched this stuff besides me. We leave the jar on the table, but he tells me to get the bottle of water and get the salt, and to dip my finger in the salt and then draw the sign of the cross on my tongue. And then I did that. And then he's like, okay, now take a swig of water, but don't spit it out. You're going to swish it around in your mouth until I tell you to spit. And then he goes under the sink, and he pulls out this clear glass bowl. And I'm like, okay, you know? And so I do that, and I'm standing up. He has me stand back up, and he puts one hand on my lower abdomen and one hand on the small of my back. And he starts praying again, like he had earlier, all hella loud, right? And again, I kind of just feel like it's ridiculous, but like, but then again, the thing just caught on fire in my hand, and I got blisters on my hands now. Like, and when he says to spit, like I spat out the water, but it was no longer water. It was like dirt, and like it was actual like dirt. And I don't even know how to like reconcile what's happening at this point. I almost fainted. I'm pretty sure I almost fainted because I just was like, oh my God. And not only was it like dirt, but it was like moving. It was like these little black undulating, I don't even know, like bugs almost, like, but it wasn't. It was like little like rice, like I don't even know, man. And so he goes, do it again, another swig. And so he has me swig the water again, swash my mouth around. I'm trying to feel like, do I have dirt in my mouth? You know what I mean? Like, what is going on? And I don't feel anything like that. And I spit it out again, more black shit. And then the third time it was like not a lot of black shit. And then he grabs more foil from his kitchen area that he had in the back, and he wraps up the jar, and he says, I'm going to go bury this. Get out of my store. Don't ever come back. And he didn't take my money, and told me to never come back. I did not know how to process what had just happened. I was alone. I didn't have anyone with me. I knew no one was ever going to believe me. I wasn't even sure if I believed myself. At one point when the jar caught fire and it was the stuff was smoldering around it and just turning into ash, I tried to pull my phone out and take a picture, and he was like, don't do that. And I was like, why? And he's like, if you take a picture of it, it will follow you. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. Like, you know, because I'm a former scientist. Like, there is no reason why this should be happening at all. And that's what I was thinking the whole time, was like, how the fuck is this happening? Like, what trick did he just play on me? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what parlor trick is this shit? Like, but then I'm like, wait, but he never touched this. Like, I've had this my whole time, and I've had my purse on my lap. Like, when I was sitting talking to him, I had my purse on my lap, like in my arms. Like, he wasn't anywhere near it. There's no way he contaminated anything. There's no, you know, it just, everything I tried to just count, I couldn't, right? And so for like years, this happened like, what, 8 years ago? For years, I looked for an answer. Like, for years, I was looking through all kinds of different cultural magical texts, asking scientists, asking other researchers, like, what could possibly have caused just the thing to catch on fire in my hands, like that, just to start there. Okay. And nobody could tell me at all. But then I reached out to Dr. Dean Radin, right? And because I saw a video he had done on YouTube about magic. And I thought maybe he might know. And I told him exactly what I just said. And I still have the email from him back, and he said, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's Guatemalan folk magic, and it is really nasty. And that's amazing that you witnessed that. Very few people on this earth have ever witnessed a physical manifestation of magic like that. And you're lucky that you weren't, you know, harmed by it. So after this event happened, my partner went literally insane. And when I say insane, I mean like institutionalized insane. I did not tell Dr. Radin that because I didn't think it mattered. Why would that matter, right? But in the email back to me, Dr. Radin said that that specific spell, he had seen it when he was traveling through South America, and that the purpose of it was to drive someone insane. Mm-hmm. Like, what the fuck? So this is where I have a problem, because I didn't believe at all that a curse could affect you if you didn't know about it or believe in it, right? So despite seeing the curse jar, I didn't think it was for me, right? I knew it wasn't for me. It was for him. And it didn't matter. It still happened. And so that made me have to reassess, like, oh, what does this mean now? Like, I guess belief is not necessary for it to harm you, because it was like what happened to me, spitting that stuff out. Mm-hmm. I was told. So I asked what it was. I was asking the guy the whole time, what is this? What is this? And he goes, I can't tell you. I can't tell you. And I was like, wait, why can't you tell me? And he goes, because if I tell you, it can follow you, like, you know, like that kind of thing. And so then my daughter's grandmother, who's a voodoo priestess, I told her about it, and she said, I can't tell you what it is either, because if I tell you, it'll follow you. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, no one will tell me. Finally, when I found out what it was, enough time had passed to where now it can't. But like Dr. Radin said the same thing. He said that, yeah, if you know about it, you will dwell on it, you'll think about it, and you'll know what it was, and it can find you again, right? But at some point, it can't anymore. So we're past that point now, thank God. And I don't know what determines that point, but it's just, it was so fucking like it's still really hard for me to believe. And the way that I know that all of that really happened is because immediately after, like the second I walked out of that store, I called my best friend and my older daughter and told them what had happened. And I was hysterically crying. Like, I was in tears, could not breathe, absolutely out of my mind. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I slept for like 3 days after that. I was so scared. Like, I was so scared of my neighbors, of what happened, if it was coming back, like what was going on. You know what I mean? I never have before, and I hope to God I never do again experience something like that, because it was absolutely terrifying. And that's what happened. So have sweet dreams. Yeah. No, I'm serious. Like that. I'm not even kidding. I wish I was joking, but that is what happened.
Yeah. So I think that one of the, when you're dealing with like folk magic, you're leaning a lot into the occult virtues. So I think there's two very important principles when you're talking about how magic operates. You could call them the laws of magic, right?
I guess.
It'd be the law of correspondence, right?
Sure.
Like goes with like.
Yeah.
And, the occult virtues and properties of materials, right?
Right.
So when you're dealing with folk magic, that's a lot. It has what you're dealing with mostly. It's the occult virtues, properties of materials.
Right.
Right. So if you're dealing with magic materially, wouldn't you think that it would manifest materially?
I mean, it wasn't for like my problem was it wasn't for me, right? I knew it wasn't for me. But what Dr. Radin said in his email back to me was that that you got off lucky. That was just you happening to be in the room when he opened it. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't for you, so it didn't fully come after you. Right. But after that happened, he started talking to himself a lot, right? And there was a couple times where I heard another voice talk back to him, and I would look in and go look to see who he was talking to, and there'd be nobody there. And one time that I was kind of spying on, because I kept hearing him doing this, and I kept hearing another voice, and I was sure that there was someone else in the house. And I went and I looked, and I heard him talking, and then the voice talked over him while he was talking, and I jumped into the room, and nobody was there. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, how the fuck is that possible? So, and then he went like literally insane. So it worked on him, right? But I got myself cleansed of it, and I just got scarred. Like, I think the way he put it was I just got a little nick from it. And that nick was me throwing, like basically spitting up like dirt, which I don't even know that's physically possible. And yes, I tried all the things. I thought, okay, maybe this is some kind of like, maybe this is a way to purge toxins from your body, right? Like that's what I was thinking. Maybe like if you just salt water, rinsed and all this stuff. So I went home and tried to do it myself. Like I did the exact same thing. I drew a sign of the cross, like that mattered on my tongue. I swished salt around. I've done this periodically over the years just to check it out. And it does not do that. Okay. It just doesn't do it. So if anyone else knows anything about it, like I would love to hear about it in the comments. Because this is one of the most jarring experiences of my life by far. I would have to say it was probably the top most horrifying experience I've ever had by far out of everything. Because the scariness of it is just like, what was it? Like how, if this is possible, what else is possible? This set me on this whole like spiral or rabbit hole of like, oh my God, I didn't believe that this could hurt me if I didn't believe in it, Then if this is real and this can happen, what else can happen? What else is real? You know what I mean? Like, and that's why I think that a lot of the time people aren't going to get results with their magic for that very reason, because they would not be able to walk themselves through the process of having to ponder those realities. Once you've experienced something like that, you start to see that things are not as they seem, and that there's a lot more to reality than we are aware, or that we've been, trained to believe in, right? And it can really be destabilizing.
When magic works in a big way, it should scare the shit out of you. You know?
Yeah.
It's like magic shouldn't. I don't think that magic is too effective if you feel comfortable and what you're experiencing. Really,
it should be at least startling.
Yeah, it should freak you out.
Yeah.
No, what there's if your magic doesn't scare you, are you even doing magic, right? That one right there.
That's yours. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
I do not recommend.
Yeah.
0 stars. I don't recommend it at all. Like, not that type. Anyways, and I don't know what it is about South American magic, but that shit scares me. Like, that is the only magic that I'm like, nope, I don't want to touch it.
Yeah, we should do an episode on the Book of San Cyprian.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with that grimoire for a few years.
Yeah, that's the first book you ever bought me. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first grimoire I bought you because you told me that story, and I was like, well, I've got
I haven't read it yet. I still haven't read it.
South American Black Magic for you.
I forget about that book. I forget that I have it. I have not read it. I have to read it. Oh my gosh. Yeah. If it's in there, I'm going to freak out. Is it in there?
I don't know. I don't think it is.
Okay.
That one, I think that one deals with like selling your soul to the devil or something. A lot of black love spells in that one.
I mean, the stuff that came out of my mouth was God.
Yeah.
I'm like, my heart's racing just talking about it. It scares the shit out of me. But man, like that was harsh, and like my belief was non-consequential at all. Mm-hmm. You know, it did not matter.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the things that you know, like we really have to reevaluate as like magicians and occultists. I really have never liked the psychological model. I think it lends to shallow interpretations. Now,
right.
Hypnosis is one of my favorite occult tools. I believe in the power of the subconscious mind. I think it's an incredibly important part of magic, but the buck does not stop there. It does not stop there. That is the surface level. That is the first gate, the first threshold. It's the subconscious mind, the power of the subconscious mind, right? And then when we're talking about, will and belief, and that is, I don't know, the third threshold, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's up there. It's very important.
Yeah.
Right. It's very important.
Yeah, you gotta want it.
And incredibly powerful. But the buck does not stop there.
It doesn't.
There is something that we cannot explain.
Right.
That I went and broke down Al-Kindi and was like, isn't it interesting? Like maybe there is a physical force and stuff. But even if there was a physical force, even if time was a field, and that is how the occult sympathies were working, right? The buck still wouldn't stop there.
Maybe it's like there's the again, we're only programmed to see from 300 to 700 nm on the light spectrum, right? That's like this tiny, tiny little sliver of the light spectrum.
Yeah.
Maybe the invisible forces are just little gnomes that are just out of our reach to see, and they're like, oh look, Anna's doing a spell. Let's go make it work for her, and they force it to work. Who knows? Like,
I mean,
at this point, it could be anything.
We could conjure the gnomes. We could talk to them directly.
I don't like gnomes.
You don't. Yeah.
They steal my socks. But no, seriously, we don't know. And again, I don't think science within its current iteration is going to be able to solve it for us. But that being said, I mean, science has been wrong 1,000 times before. It's always wrong. It's always saying stuff is not existing or not real.
That's the scientific method at work. That's the point. You're supposed to prove things wrong and then adjust your understanding.
That is never how it works.
Scientific method. If science was always right, if something science said was right and then never changed, then that wouldn't be science.
Okay, no. What I mean is that science has a problem of saying things are not real when they don't know how to explain them. Instead of just saying, we don't know, okay? Mm-hmm. Or we're not sure, they like refuse to do that. They'll just say, that's not possible until it is possible. And it's like, what changed? Just the technology, but the thing was always possible, So I'm urging people to say, the idea that it can't be true because it just sounds ridiculous is like, we live on a planet spinning in outer space, going 26,000 miles per second or something through the freaking galaxy. Like, what are you talking about? It's not possible. Like, that doesn't sound absurd to you? Like, because that is absurd, and yet it is allegedly our reality, right? Like, so how could all this other stuff not be crazy and real? Like we're picking and choosing things here. We're cherry picking the things that we want to believe is real and not,
Yeah.
And that, because it's safer. It's safer, I think.
Well, you don't have, so I think it's, you don't have, it's easier to not explore.
That's what I'm saying. Kind of I think, I think that if you are not capable of just, pondering the idea that people can do this, then it's just because your mind is just not strong enough to handle it.
Yeah, that's
it would break you.
Maybe.
The skeptics are always the ones that are the worst, like when they get faced with the reality of the situation.
Perhaps. It's definitely a difficult thing to process and a difficult thing to walk through, right?
Yes.
It is a lot safer to deny the reality. And I think that's like one of the issues with the current way astrology is practiced. I mean, I was doing a part of the lecture series for the Initiation into Hermetics lecture series. I'm doing one of the weeks on astrology, and so I'm doing the lectures for the astrology, and I'm like trying to explain the difference between, classical astrology and modern astrology, and why, as a magician, it's important that you start from a classical foundation and then work your way into modern instead of starting modern and then go to classical. Is because in modernity, it starts with the assumption that it is archetypal, that it is psychological, that it is a part of a personality, whereas there was a world where it's like when they're talking about astrology in these books and these grimoires, these planets to them have spirits and minds and souls. They believe in these things. It's like actual things that they can communicate with, right? And that is a lot harder to have to rationalize and understand and accept than, oh, well, astrology works, but I don't know how it works. Astrology works. I don't know how it works. It's kind of weird how accurate it is. But all the planets are just
cold rocks in the outer space.
They're just like they're basically like MBTI characters or something like that. Yeah.
I don't know. It is a lot.
But it's like so funny too, because I always like think about I spend so much time consuming medieval literature. And I find myself like, man, this is smart. And I like always find myself asking like, am I just like literally medieval? Like my mindset is medieval.
Maybe they were smarter than we give them credit for.
We give them credit for.
So I had this idea that maybe what happens is that as soon as a time period gets close to understanding things, that's when some new thing like science comes into play and takes away all of the intuition out of a thing and makes it cold and hard and scientific.
A new thing like science.
Right. Well, I'm saying like because science before was connected to spirituality originally.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it, the path got split. Right. So maybe that's what it is.
It was all philosophy.
Well, the and psychology was also the study of the soul originally.
When they called somebody a philosopher, they were calling them a
scientist. Yeah. I know. I mean, and that's what I mean is I think it's like on purpose. It's because if we know what we are really and the powers that we actually are capable of, we're dangerous. And so you can't contain dangerous. You can't, exert control over dangerous like you can over timid and scared of the world, right? So that's what that's my idea. I think it's all a conspiracy, but that's just me. You know me. But yeah, like I would say, look, in teaching science to my students, when I was a high school science teacher, I would go over the anatomy of a cell and I would explain it to them about it, how it was like a little microcosm of us, like how we have lungs and a digestive, we have respiratory, circulatory system, digestive system, all of those things, right? That the cell also has that, right? In it. Why is it not possible that we are just parts of some other structure within the universe that is connected? Like, because when you look inside a cell, it's microscopic and tiny, right? But to the organelles and things that are within it, it is a vast, huge universe, just like how we are in this vast, huge universe. So it's a perspective situation, you know what I mean? And why is it not that for us? What if it's just like the Russian doll, like the nesting dolls, it's like we're part of a machine. Our daily lives are somehow doing some function of the greater, larger organism that is like the universe or something, right? Because when you look at those videos that we have now from Harvard of the cells and what happens inside of them, there are literally people living inside of your cells. Like I showed you those videos, right? There's literally people that have like little dogs on leashes that walk down the microtubules and like help with the tension that happens before the cells split into mitosis, right? Like there are little beings that are on little rafts that float across little ponds in your cell to deliver payloads and then come back and sleep. Like a person going to work does, and that's all real. So like, if that's true, and these things are just living their lives unaware that they're part of a bigger thing, which is us, how is it that that's not the same for us? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that because that individual cell has all of the knowledge and all of the information it needs to create another you in every nucleus, right? It has the entire blueprint of your entire identity from birth to death already written in it in code. Okay? Even though it's not aware of it. Why can't that be the same for us? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, and thus that would also explain how we're able to do certain things once we reach a certain mindset, or kind of like a understanding of how things work, that we're just able to access it. You know what I mean? That's my idea about it. Mm-hmm. So, but I'm just saying, I think magic is real. I know it's real. I know it's real. And I think that a lot of people don't believe it because it would be dangerous for them.
Yeah.
So, and it will continue to stay occulted in that fashion for that reason. Mm-hmm. You're not ready to hear it. It's not your time to hear it. So we don't even have to hide it because it hides itself. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're good?
Yeah, so I think we're gonna end the episode there. Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us.
Yeah, join the app.
Yes, get on livegrimoire.com.
Yeah.
Join us on Sundays for Sunday service with the Temple Cat. It is an online occult temple. We've got a bunch of people that show up every Sunday. We set our weeks up.
Yep.
For magical success. We do invocations, incantations of the sun. We do group guided hypnosis meditation, which is banging. It is so good. Yeah. Do ritual purification and astrological forecast, so you guys know what's coming for you. Maybe you can time some spells for the upcoming week, or you just know what's going on in the sky. Yes. Dr. Stone works on these kind of like sermon kind of things that we get through intuitive occult meetings. So we're getting messages directly from the gods and the spirits for people. So join us Sundays, service live stream, 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
No, it'll be daylight time now.
Yeah.
But so we're going on daylight savings now. It just changed.
It'll still be at 12:30 p.m. PST though.
Right. Yeah. But for people that are not participating in daylight savings time is what I'm saying. Because there's kind of places that don't.
But it'll still be Pacific Standard Time.
No, we're 1 hour ahead now.
Okay.
And other places don't follow that. So
yeah.
But so we're gonna be on 12:30 Sundays, and join the app. It's free, and so is our temple, right? Cat is free.
Yeah. So Temple Cat.
Yeah, and we have like-minded, awesome people that are looking for a place right now, especially in this really crappy time that we're going through with, all the realizations out there of all the darkness that surrounds us constantly, that is far worse than any conspiracy theorist could probably ever imagine. Plus, with all of the instability throughout the world right now, it is a place where we can all kind of congregate and get together and, start to hopefully affect some positive change in our communities.
Mm-hmm. And on top of that, we also have on the channel memberships. If you join Neophyte tier, you get access to videos before they're released. And if you join the Initiate tier membership on the YouTube channel, you get access to private videos that are not getting released to the YouTube channel. They're actually lecture series that are going to our theological seminary, the college, Adepts College of Magicians, which is our theological seminary. As we are developing the lectures for the different classes that are a part of the theological seminary, people in the initiate tier on the YouTube channel, they get to watch the lectures
and
as they're being developed. They're pretty intense lectures. I'm really excited about them. I've had a lot of people joining from the memberships, and the magical education you're getting on that, you are not going to get anywhere else. Yeah. Nowhere else. We're dealing with primary sources. We are dealing with the roots of magic. The initiation and hermetic series is crazy intense. Dr. Stone's tarot
history of tarot. Yeah,
tarot series gets it into the history of tarot. But I mean, my week 2, I've been working on. I'm teaching foundations and basics of astrology, and then I'm going straight in. Like, we just went through the Divine Paimonder, outlined a magical cosmology. Week 2, we're studying like a ritual of an ancient hermeticist, exactly what techniques he was using from an Egyptian hermeticist.
Right.
The astrology section, we're going over Al-Kindi's race theory and teaching all the elements. The alchemy section, I'm super excited about.
Oh my gosh.
Because that one, I'm breaking down the secrets of the Golden Tractate, 4th century book of alchemy.
This is not New Age.
This is not your Golden Dawn. This is not your OTO. This is the real deal stuff. Yeah,
it is. So again, be a real one and
be a real one. Yeah, so that's for members of the channel. Join the initiate tier if you want access to those videos. But thank you guys for joining us.
Yes.
Always with Discourse. Next week we have an amazing episode planned. I'm so excited for it.
Oh yeah.
We have probably the great Kabbalist Yura the Ari. We interviewed him, and if you guys are not familiar with him, you should get familiar with him, because the guy is making history, I think. I personally believe. So
definitely check him out, and then you can watch our interview with him. Next week.
You can watch our interview with him next week. That's our episode. It's just amazing. It's amazing what he's doing on the internet.
It is.
I cannot believe it. Yeah. He's a real deal Kabbalist, like a Kabbalist of the legends. So
So thank you guys for watching, and we hope to see you Sunday, or in the temple, or on the app.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
You've been listening to Discourse, where we venture into the mysteries of esotericism, the occult, and the depths of spiritual exploration. I am Abammon the Great, joined as always by Dr. Anna Stone, bringing adept insights to help guide your journey. Remember, the path of wisdom is illuminated by both knowledge and experience. Until next time, continue your exploration and stay attuned to the unseen.